Okay, so this is the chapters 20 through 22 review, and the first thing that we're going to do, because I'm going to bring back in some one proportion Z tests, is make sure that you know the difference between the one and the two proportion tests. Okay, so what we're going to do is read a couple of situations, and then you're going to decide if they are one proportion or two proportions. So here we go. So read this first one, see what you think. So to me, it looks like all they're going to be doing is looking at South Tahoe residences, and so that is what makes this a one proportion Z test. Okay, this one is very similar, but read it and see if you can figure out how it is different. So read number 2. So there he is going to be having both the South and the North Lake Tahoe residences. So therefore, that's a two proportion Z test. Okay, so let me let you read the next two and see if you can get those, and then if so, then we'll go on. Okay, so since number 3 is talking about the proportion of voters that'll vote Democrat and the proportion of voters that vote Republican, then that's a two proportion Z test. And 4 is just asking if the proportion that vote Democrat is more than 50%. So a common thing you'll see is that you will be given a percent to compare to if it's a one proportion Z test. Okay, so I will go ahead. Let me put these answers up here for the rest of these, and you can check those. Um, so 5 is 1 and 6 is 2. You can read those and then go back and check. 7 and 8 are 2 and then 1. And 9 and 10 are 1 and then 2. Okay, so if you're having troubles with that, you can read those and make sure you're okay with that. But let's go on and actually do one of these one proportion Z tests, because we haven't done that in the calculator, and I'd like to show you how to do that. So this first one says that we want to know about the proportion of workers in this city who are union members. We want to compare that to the national rate of 13.5%. So because we just have this one group that we are comparing to a given national rate of 13.5%, this is a one proportion Z test. So if you have a one proportion test, then when you define your parameter, you are only defining one proportion. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, and so then here is your hypothesis statement. Since we want to know if the proportion is less in this city, then our alternative is a less than. Now I write these as a decimal because in a minute when you put these into your calculator, that's going to help you to just go ahead and have those as a decimal. So let's go ahead then and go to our calculator and see how that's going to work, because we have not done one of these one proportion Z tests in our calculator. So we pull this up and we go stat over to tests. And so if you look down at number 5, it is a one proportion Z test. Remember before we had done a two proportion Z test. So we're going to use number 5. And when we do that, the null hypothesis, the P with a little 0, is the claim that they that you are testing against. And so we are testing against that 0.135. Then the successes that they give us are these whole number amounts of 240 and 2000, and then the tail is a less than. So when I go ahead and run this test, then I get my p-value, or my z-score, and my p-value, okay? And so from there, you then can finish the rest out, and I'll go ahead and show you what that is just so that you can check. But the rest of that is the same kind of thing on a test. Now, there will be errors on the tests that you take, but I did not put them on here. We seem to kind of be getting, tons of that, and it's just over and over and over again, so I shortened it so that this review did not have the errors on it. All right, and then the one thing that I wanted to remind you about number 2 was just this little section. When you get to this in number 2, I want to remind you, this is a 2 proportion. I wanted to remind you again that your x that you put into the calculator has to be the number of successes and cannot be a decimal. So in this case, it was 6.5% of the 1,000 in the sample, which meant that it was 65. Had that been a portion, a decimal number of people, then I would have rounded it appropriately, because that has to be a whole number. So I just wanted to remind you before you continue that. And so then after you completed this, then I will send the key of this, or I have the key of this so that you can check before the test.